Okay, so this assignment, SA2, is going to be an analysis of visual rhetoric. And what I'm going to be talking about today is just some of the basic concepts that relate to it. Okay. Media literacy is one of the concepts, and literacy is a concept that people generally understand to mean the ability to read and write. Is that true of you guys? Is that your understanding of literacy? If someone is literate, that means they can read and write, right? They can read, print, type, right? And they can write, you know, with words and letters and sentences, okay? That's our general understanding of literacy, okay? So this SA2 is going to depend on a different kind of literacy called visual literacy. And you might want to write these things down as I say them. I'll just read out some key concepts that I'm going to talk about, and then you guys can listen for the definitions as I'm talking and write those down. Okay, so the first one is media literacy, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. All right. I'm going to talk about visual rhetoric. Okay. I'm going to talk about demographics and target audience. Visual literacy and visual analysis. Okay, those are the key concepts that I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes here. And these all relate, as I said, to the SA2 project, which is an analysis of visual rhetoric. Okay. So as we move through your course text, thinking for yourself, okay, we're sort of gathering what I like to call tools of analysis. Okay, different tools and strategies that we can use to approach our critical thinking about texts. And I'm going to put text in quotes, as people like me love to do, right? Which indicates that the word text is relative and can be understood in a lot of ways. Everything is a text, right? To people like me. Okay, so images are texts that can be read, interpreted, analyzed, and evaluated. And that's what you're going to be doing for SA2. Okay, you're going to pick an image, okay, analyze it, and evaluate it. Okay, we're going to talk about how to go about that over the next couple weeks. All right, but tools of analysis. So chapter 5 is about assumptions. That's what it's called. It's all about assumptions. And assumptions are sort of related to inferences. At least conscious working assumptions are related to inferences. Those two concepts are closely related. And remember, inferences is that thing we do with facts, okay, to make meaning of them. We try to figure out what the facts mean. The facts are just facts and they're not disputable, right? Or they can be disputed, but they're not arguable, right? But then they're sort of useless on their own until we try to decide what they mean, okay? And then we can use them to do some work, to make arguments. Okay, so chapter 5 assumptions is closely related to inferences when they're conscious. Okay, chapter 5 talks about conscious working assumptions, when you're aware that you're assuming. That's similar to inferring. All right, and when you're doing it for a particular purpose, right? And the working part of conscious working assumptions means that it's a work in progress. Okay, you're refraining from deciding ultimately about what those facts mean, okay, when you're doing conscious working assumptions or inferences. You're making an educated guess that's provisional, provided what you know now. This is what you think these facts mean, okay? But there are other kinds of assumptions that chapter 5 also discusses, unconscious ones, which a lot of us rely on, okay? A lot of us rely on those to draw conclusions about the things we observe. And then on top of that, we forget, okay, that we made those assumptions in the first place, and they just get embedded in our consciousness as a kind of fact, which we draw on over and over and over. Okay, so we've stopped at that point gathering more information, and we just rely on our assumptions. And we can look back at the image analysis exercises that we did earlier in the semester with the Johnsons and the 10 facts about a picture, right? to reflect on how readily we revert to cultural assumptions, the things that we know already about a culture and that we just assume to always be true in every instance. And that can become a problem if your purpose is to think carefully and critically about something, as ours is in this class. All right, so that's what chapter 5 is about. It's about the role of assumptions in critical thinking, okay, and making us more consciously aware about how they operate in our own thinking. All right, so media literacy is the ability to read and communicate in and interpret and analyze and evaluate all different kinds of messages being delivered through a variety of different mediums. And medium is one of those words that gets used all the time and people don't really pay attention to what it means. But a medium is a vehicle, it's a conveyance, right? And there are lots of different mediums, lots of different vehicles that we as humans use to convey our ideas from our mind to another mind, okay? They carry those ideas, a variety of different mediums do. And we have to be able to interpret and critically analyze them all. And that is becoming increasingly more apparent. If you didn't agree with me 10 years ago when I started teaching this stuff, I hope it's not a hard sell now, okay? Given the current state of things, especially in this country, that people are lacking that ability to critically analyze all different kinds of mediums and the messages that they contain. Messages that are trying to persuade them to do things that might not be that good for them, okay? So that's what we're doing. We're moving from, okay, a focus on text as a medium for conveying an argument to a focus on different kinds of mediums, which are also used all the time and often are flying under our critical thinking radar because we're not looking for them, okay, to convey arguments and persuade us to do things, to believe things, to vote for certain candidates instead of others, okay, to buy certain products that might not be that healthy for us, to wear or not wear, for the love of God, a mask, okay? Lots of different mediums. All right, so images like text are visual arguments. Okay, they are a medium for conveying arguments. Almost always, images are trying to convey a particular argument. You know, ads that rely heavily on images, their main argument, the one on the surface, is buy this product. That's the argument that ads are making, right? And increasingly, they're using visual rhetoric to do it. Okay, visual rhetoric is a term that means an argument being conveyed through visual details versus textual ones, right? And we can read those. We read them often unconsciously without conscious awareness, and we're going to practice being more conscious about the images and how we're reading them and the arguments that they're trying to persuade us of, right? Tapping into our subconscious rather than our conscious awareness, okay? Think about text though, right? As a kind of sign or symbol, right? Visual rhetoric conveys its messages through different kinds of signs and symbols than text does. But text is just an arbitrary set of signs and symbols, right? Think about the letter A, for example. The letter A is just a squiggle, okay? It's just an organized, you know, pigmentation on a page, right? That represents something. It represents a sound that we all agree is the sound ah or a, right? But if you look at the, you know, the incredible number of human languages on this planet, right? It shouldn't be a stretch to understand that our particular A, the Arabic A, by the way, is just arbitrary. It's just something that people made up to try to represent the sounds that they were making in speech, okay? Visual rhetoric uses signs and symbols too, they're just different. So we have to practice learning to identify, interpret, and analyze them. And that's what we're going to be doing for Essay 2. All right, so I just laid a lot out there. Does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about so far? No, we all good? Okay. All right, so images are visual arguments, I said. Right? And as I also mentioned, they rely really heavily on our unconscious value assumptions to make their arguments. They don't want us to notice them, right? They don't want us to even be aware that they're trying to persuade us. And they do that by appealing to our unconscious value assumptions. So that's where the idea of target audience slash demographic becomes really important. A demographic, does anybody know what the word demographic means? It's a word that's commonly used in business and marketing in particular. Anybody know? Guys, anybody business majors in here? Okay, demographic. It's got the same root, demo, as democracy, which is supposed to mean government by the people, right? That's what it's supposed to mean. So demo means people in the Greek. And graphic is a way to measure something. So a demographic is a way that, you know, advertisers measure people. They put them in groups and then they stereotype them. They put them in groups based on assumptions about shared characteristics within that group. So what are some examples of demographics that marketers use to group people so that they can target them for their marketing messages? Give me some examples of the criteria that advertisers use to group people so they can target them with their marketing messages. Come on, you guys, you're all target audience members. You're all in the target audience for marketers with their messages. People trying to sell you stuff. What's your demographic? What are some characteristics of your group that you think mean something to advertisers? What kinds of things do you guys buy?
We're all students.
All students? Okay, that's a demographic. Okay. What else? What kind of students are you? Other characteristics that you guys all share as a group, or most of you?
Someone said age.
Age. Oh, is somebody typing at me? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
people
Thank you. Thank you for calling my attention to the chat. Sometimes I get fixated. Okay. Yes, age. Thank you, Eleanor. Age is a big one. That's one of the main ones that they use is age, because they assume that people in the same age group want and care about and value the same things and have the same attitudes and the same interests, right? So a marketer could be selling a single product, but that marketer is going to craft a different message based on the age group that they're targeting. And we'll look at an example of that when we go through some examples in this PPT that I'm going to show you guys. Okay, one product, totally different messages for different demographics. Okay, education level, Suzanne said, and race, absolutely. Those are key demographic criteria. Okay, key criteria that advertisers use to group people and then make assumptions about them. Okay, what are they? What's likely to get through to them? What's likely to persuade them? What kinds of messages? Okay, so a typical age group is 18 to 35. I hear that all the time. And gender is another one, you guys, right? Gender is another big one, right? You'll see the same toy. There goes my neck. We don't have Toys R Us anymore, but when my kids were little, we used to go into Toys R Us and they had the same freaking toys in different colors for boys and girls, right? The same type of toy. And the pink one was for the pink gun was for the girls. Good Lord. And the blue one was for the boys. And the pictures on the packaging would be different for boys than they would for girls, right? Eleanor says income. All right, but 18 to 35-year-old males is a huge demographic for people wanting to sell stuff. And why? Because they have a lot of time on their hands. There goes my neck. You can't hear that cracking. They have a lot of time on their hands, and they have a lot of disposable income as a group. Now, that's a huge assumption to make about people, isn't it? And you guys in here, the individuals that I identify as gendered male, you're going, not me, right? And that's one of the things that happens with advertising, is that they're lumping everybody into one group. But they can do that because they're generalizing. Remember what we said about generalizations when we were talking about chapters 3 and 4 about facts, inferences, and generalizations? If there's a pattern, if there is sufficient recurrence of facts and inferences, if they're stacking up and creating a pattern, then you can reasonably generalize from that pattern. And that's what marketers do when they're considering their demographic, their target audience. Okay, so I'm gonna move away from the term demographic now, and I will just be using the term target audience over and over as I talk to you about this stuff, because it's super important to the analysis that you're going to be doing for SA2. You have got to identify the intended target audience, all right? Who do the people or entities that created this message that you're analyzing think it's aimed at, okay? Who are they planning, right, to persuade with this message? You're going to interpret that, and then you're going to analyze whether or not they've done a good job. That's SA2, analysis and evaluation. Okay, like SA1, but with an image. All right, so a target audience is a target audience because it shares some things. And people can generalize about that because there's a pattern. And they do. And they make assumptions about what that group values, believes, cares about, worries about, is concerned about, is interested in, what their attitudes are generally towards an issue or a product or a topic. Okay, the people who craft the images are making assumptions about their target audience. That's super, super important. Okay, and then they use the visual rhetoric to appeal to that audience. The details in the image are intended to appeal to that target audience on the basis of those assumptions that they've made about it. Okay, so I think that's everything I have to say by way of introduction. We talked about tools of analysis, media literacy, visual rhetoric, okay, unconscious value assumptions, demographics, which equals target audience, visual rhetoric, visual literacy, and visual analysis, which is what you're going to do for SA2. Do you guys have any questions about any of those concepts?
I do. So as an example, since our textbook, it has this kind of picture on the front. Could this be an example as targeting people who are outdoors people?
Sure.
Could that be, okay.
Sure, sure. Right, or people who are about to jump off a cliff in their kayak and they don't know what's going to happen when they land, right? Because they're learning how to think critically. And it's a bit of vertigo, isn't it? When you have the rug pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
I've seen that on some of your faces. Some of you are like, oh yeah, I know all this, right? But others of you were like, oh my God, maybe it's not the Johnsons, you know? And that's perfect. That is perfect. That's what's supposed to happen here. Okay. All right, so let's do a little bit of practice. Okay, let me open this. You know what? I think I already downloaded this and I want to look at that. Uh-oh. Okay, I don't care. All right, let me move that over. Let's see, there's my work folder. There's English 2. There it is. Nope, that's the website. I don't want the final exam. There we go. That's the one I want to look at with you. Okay, so this is a rather elaborate, although informative, I will say, okay, in my own defense, introduction to this assignment. There's lots of words here. You should read them all. It doesn't mean it's a more complicated or harder or incomprehensible assignment. All of these words are intended to help you understand the assignment. Okay, but this is what I want to look at right now with you, this image. This is an example. Hello, I want to make this bigger. No, not smaller, bigger, bigger. Okay, yeah. This is an example of visual rhetoric. This is an image that's trying to make an argument about a particular issue. All right, oh, but before I get into that, sorry to jump around. Let me talk to you about topic selection in this assignment. Okay, step one is topic selection. These are the criteria. You're going to pick an image for essay 2 to analyze and then write about in essay 2. And it's got to have these things. And I'll talk more about how to select your image in a little bit. All right, but I'm going to talk about these things as we unpack that image that I just showed you. All right, your image must be current. It can't be any older than 6, and I'll show you how to find that out. It's got to have sufficient visual versus textual detail for your analysis. There's got to be enough stuff in it visually for you to talk about in your essay. You've got to be able to tell who made it, okay? And where it's likely to be seen, creator and place of publication. Now, if it's a photograph like the one I just showed you, you don't necessarily need to know who the photographer is, all right? But you need to know who caused it to be made, all right? Who caused it to be made and where it's likely to be seen. That's place of publication. It's got to have a discernible intended audience. You need to know who's targeted by the image so that you can do your analysis. And it's got to have a discernible context. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And primary purpose, which we'll talk about more in a minute. So those are the criteria that I'm going to come back to for picking your image. Let's go back to this image and discuss some of those. Okay, so I'll tell you the place of publication, right, where this image was published. It was published in a publication called the AP, the Associated Press. And if you're not familiar with the AP, it's a publication that a lot of other news organizations refer to for their facts. Okay, the AP is an investigative news organization. They go find stuff out and then they publish it, okay, about important things that are going on in the world. Okay, so from that information, you can start to infer who the likely audience is for the Associated Press. Who reads that, right? And from that, you can extrapolate some things about the intended audience, some of their values, beliefs, and concerns. We'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so the AP is where this was published. Who made this image or caused it to be made, you guys? You can tell that from just looking at it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it's made for people to stop using fossil fuel, or because it says oil industry, and then with the dinosaur in it, so it's like instantly for me, it's like fossil fuel or something like that.
Yes, I like that you said instantly, right? Because as I said before, that's how these things work. That's how visual arguments work. They're instant. They're really fast. And that's on purpose. They don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to spend too much time thinking about it. They want you to just understand it and then move on to the next visual argument, right? Because we are bombarded with these on a daily basis. All right, so you identified, Ethan, the main argument, or at least the one on the surface, that this image is trying to make. Stop the oil industry. And you can see that by reading the banner here. But who caused this image to be made?
Maybe people who are, I don't know, aware of the damage that fossil fuel is making on the earth.
Okay, and a particular group of people, you know, did it, right? Made this image. Yeah. One group in particular. Who's that?
I don't know.
Anybody? Go ahead, Susie.
Greenpeace.
That's it.
Oh.
You guys know Greenpeace. Come on, you're all Santa Cruz County based folks, right? You've been on freaking Pacific Avenue and assaulted by those people with clipboards? No, only me. They only approach me. Right? They approach you with their clipboards acting like they want you to sign a petition, which they kind of do, but really that's a cover, right? What do they want from you on Pacific Avenue, Greenpeacers? We'll come back to that when we're talking about the primary purpose of this image. All right, but what's Greenpeace, you guys? Susie, what's Greenpeace?
It's an environmental activist group, and they like stop whaling and do a bunch of other stuff, and they fight big companies who are polluting and doing other things, harming animals. And they're funded by membership, so that's what they're asking you for. Is they want you to become a member so that they can have the funding to do these peaceful actions and these protests, basically like the one that you're seeing here. This powerful image here.
Yeah.
It's done fueled by money from members.
That's right. You skipped right to the end of my presentation. That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll come back to it. So this is Greenpeace, an environmental organization, right? That this organization does a lot of different kinds of work, not just stuff like this, but they do stuff like this for a particular purpose, which Susie just touched on. All right. They advocate in the courts. They do political protest actions like this to try to stop bad things from happening to the environment. They're operating on a lot of different levels. Greenpeace does to save animals, to save, habitats, right? To defend the environment. You guys are nodding your heads now. Now you remember who Greenpeace is, right? Dahlia, no, still no. Okay, well now you know. That's Greenpeace, and that's the organization that caused this image to be taken and then published. Greenpeace. So the argument in this image, as Ethan said, is stop the oil industry, right? How does the visual rhetoric convey that argument? We can read the banner. Here's textual rhetoric right here. Stop oil industry, Greenpeace. We can read that the way we normally read text. But what about the visual details in this image? How do they contribute to the argument this image is making? Pick out some specific ones.
One, they're on a tanker, which is probably carrying oil.
Okay. And like you said, probably you're inferring, right?
Yeah. Only we can't see the ship completely, but we can see that there's an ocean right there, and it looks to be as a boat, which probably is carrying oil. So
good job, right? We can reasonably infer that from the facts that we have in the image. This is an oil tanker, right? That very likely might be carrying oil right now. And what are some of the details that contribute to supporting that inference? What specific details support that inference that Ethan just made?
well, you can also show the level on the side of the ship.
Good. That shows the water level right there. Those numbers show how high or low the ship is riding in the water. Good. That's an important detail. And one that I hadn't noticed before, even though I've looked at this picture many, many times. Good observation. What else? What other visual details support that inference?
It's huge. So
Yeah.
big that these people I'm not sure what they're sitting on, but obviously the ship itself is giant.
So in proportion, the proportion between human beings, which we can readily identify as human beings, and the thing that they're on, which we have inferred is an oil tanker, this is probably the anchor. This looks like an anchor to me. All right. That's how another way the visual rhetoric helps to convey the argument that this is huge, that it dwarfs these people. Okay. So that helps support the inference that it's an oil tanker because we happen to know that those are huge. We can put that information together with our prior knowledge. Okay. All right, so those are some details that support the inference. What are some others?
It says oil on that sign, so you would
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Okay, so that helps. But what are some other visual details that support the inferences that Ethan made that this is an oil tanker, probably carrying oil versus empty?
It's on the ocean?
Yeah, it's at sea. Or, I mean, we can't really tell because of the framing. Framing is an important element in visual rhetoric that we'll talk about some more later on. Okay, but the way this image is cropped, the way it's framed, right? What's in and not in the image gives us the impression that this ship is at sea, doesn't it? Because all we can see in the background is water, right? With which we can infer is an ocean water, because a ship this size, that's usually where you'll find it, in the ocean. All right, we can also see some little ripples here that indicate that the ship might be moving. Okay, so all of these details are important to supporting the inferences that you want to make from it, which in turn support the argument that this image is making. Okay, so we're gonna move through those in a little bit more rigorously here. Let me move my stupid Zoom window thingy. Okay, that's better. It keeps popping up every time I move my cursor around, which I do a lot. Okay. All right, so what other details in this image support its argument? Who's the target audience, you guys? Let's identify the target audience. We're going to infer that from the details in the image and what we know about who created the image and where it's likely to, where it was published, and therefore who's likely to see it.
I guess you could say everyone, technically.
Who reads the AP? Does everybody read the AP?
No, but images spread pretty quickly through the internet, so
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It could be anyone. Or I would say probably the newer generation.
Okay, younger people
Yeah.
versus older people. Okay, so your speculations aren't wrong, Ethan. Okay, but let me just say that for the sake of SA2, everyone isn't going to work. You need to be able to identify a specific target audience with a specific set of shared values, beliefs, concerns, interests, attitudes. Okay, so not everybody is going to react to this image the same way. Okay, certain groups of people are going to react to this image differently. So it's an image crafted on purpose for a particular group of people to persuade them to support the cause of Greenpeace. Right? So who are those people? What do they value? What do they believe in? What are they worried about? What are their interests?
Politically active people.
Okay, politically active
About the environment.
people. Let's just start there with the obvious one. You guys were probably thinking this, but thought it was too obvious, right? People who care about the environment are definitely in the group targeted by this image, right? If you're an oil industry executive, are you likely to respond favorably to this image? No. What are you going to think of these people and what they're doing when you see this image? If you work for the oil industry, let's say you're a person who works on an oil rig at sea, right? Or a person who's working on this ship. What are you going to think of these people and what they're doing and their cause? Do you guys get the gist of my question?
Maybe they could take away potential supporters in the future, like people who would want to still have oil, and they can take away people who would want to purchase it someday or go into alternative energy instead.
Yeah, so if you work in the oil industry, Delia, are you saying that these people might be able to persuade some of those people to agree with them instead and
Like,
stop supporting oil?
yeah, like if people usually have, like, their argument is basically saying that, and if other people don't want to support them anymore, they could lose funding, or maybe someone politically active towards supporting them, and they could lose, well, people working there could lose their jobs if no one wants to support them anymore. So it's not really in favor to them. It's more like you're ruining a potential business for someone.
That's right. That's right. That's what I was driving at, is that the people who support the oil industry, who work in it, who depend on it for their livelihood, they're not going to, they're not going to think these are cool guys doing a cool thing, right? They're going to think these guys are jerks, right? They're going to think they're a bunch of reckless hippies, right? Who care more about the environment than people's jobs and their livelihoods and their families. Okay. And by the way, they're trespassing, right? So they're criminals. That's going to be the attitude of many people who see this image because of the way it's designed, because of what it shows. So this image is not for those people. Does that make sense? Those people are not in the target audience for this argument. It's not going to persuade them. Okay, it's just going to make them dislike Greenpeace more. Right? Do you guys agree with me? Okay, that's my interpretation. At any rate, that's my analysis. Okay, that's how I'm going to figure out who the intended audience is. All right, so who then is the intended audience? We said environmentalists, people who care about the environment, right? What other things do they believe in?
Maybe since these people are reading like a newspaper all the time, like what's happening in the world, they care about, what world events, something outside of my sphere, my daily sphere.
Right.
So other people maybe, or other countries.
Yeah. So, most Americans, if we're thinking Americans are part of the target audience, because Greenpeace is an American organization, at least it originated in the US. Okay. And the AP is an American newspaper. Okay. If we're assuming that they're in the target audience, they're not going to be out at sea to see this stuff going on, right? But they still care about it, even though it's not close to their home. Because nobody's home is at sea. At least not human beings. We don't live at sea. Okay? So yeah, and what kind of politics do those people often have, you guys? Because that's another demographic, is political values and beliefs. Religious values and beliefs is another demographic criteria. Okay, political values and beliefs. Who reads the AP? What's your assumption? Or what's your conscious working assumption? What's your inference?
People who lean to the left.
Yeah, more politically liberal people read a publication like that. Okay, so they're already going to be down with Greenpeace pretty much, right? And we could list some more of the target audience's shared values, beliefs, concerns, interests. They're interested in animals and the ocean and environmental justice and stuff like that. Okay, we could list some more of those. But just to move on, they're already down with Greenpeace, right? They already, at least intellectually, support what Greenpeace is doing. Right? Agreed? The target audience? So then what's the point of the picture? Why do this stunt? Because this is risky what these people are doing, isn't it? They're putting their bodies on the line here. If you look closely at this image, you can see that they're literally chained to this anchor, right? It's like a protest that people do sometimes with trees when they chain themselves to a tree, right? So that you can't cut down the tree. They have disabled this tanker. This tanker can't do what it wants to do anymore because these people are attached to it and they might get killed, right? And then the people operating this tanker would be in trouble for manslaughter. So that makes them extra hate the people who are on the tanker. Okay, but they are putting their lives on the line. They're at sea, or at least we're supposed to infer that, in a very dangerous situation. Why do that? And then why pay, as Greenpeace did, to have this image published? Why go to all that trouble? What's the purpose? What's the primary purpose of this image?
I guess you could say to make a statement.
Yeah, but why? Why make the statement? What does Greenpeace want us to do, you guys?
To change.
They want us to change our behavior, and that could definitely be part of the message here, right? In fact, it literally says stop the oil industry, which if you're an oil consumer means stop or reduce your oil consumption. That's one thing people could do. Right? What's another thing that Greenpeace wants people to do?
Support them.
Support them how?
Financially.
That's it. That's what Susie said. They want my $50. They want my $50 a month. Like, guys, I can't afford that. I'm just a teacher. Okay, I'm poor, right? And I'm already supporting 10 other organizations because I'm terrified of what this administration is doing to everything I care about, okay, including the environment, okay? Sierra Club, okay, Environmental Defense Fund. I've got stake in all of those organizations. Sorry, Greenpeace. But that's what they want. They want your $50 or your 20 or your 25 if you're a student, right? That is the purpose of this image. That's its primary purpose. The main reason for making it. Because they don't expect people in their target audience to go do this, do they? Okay. They're not gonna, they don't expect a middle-aged woman like me to go climb on the anchor of an oil tanker, right? And risk life and limb to stop the oil industry. They're gonna do that for me. And then they're gonna guilt me into supporting them financially. That's what they're doing here, okay? They're appealing to my values, beliefs, shame, right? To persuade me to financially support them, okay? So we just did almost all of this stuff here. We identified, okay, we didn't talk about how old it is, but I can show you how to find that out about your image. It's got sufficient detail, visual detail, okay? There's a lot more in that image we could have talked about, but didn't. Okay, we figured out who made it, okay, and where it was published, so we know who's gonna see it, so we can infer the intended audience from that information, right? And then we can infer some things about that audience by generalizing because of the patterns that we're aware of, okay, and how people are grouped according to values, beliefs, concerns. We identified its context. We didn't, but let's talk about that now. If this image has a rhetorical context, it's making an argument about something that's going on, about an issue that's going on right now. That's the context. And what is that for this image? What's its context? What's it making an argument about? The topic.
The big bad oil industry.
It's making about an argument about the oil industry, but why? Put all of the details in this image together. What's going on that has caused, or that Greenpeace feels has created the need for this argument to be made? Does that question make sense? What's going on that's created the need for this argument to be made?
Could you say global warming?
Global warming is part of the context for this image, right? Because the burning of fossil fuels is what causes climate change, which is real and happening. Okay. What else? Sizzy, go ahead.
Oil spills. There's like
Yes.
so many oil spills in the ocean.
Yes. Sorry to cut you off. I was so excited.
No worries.
Yes, there have been some recent, very terrible oil spills. Okay, in the U.S., in the Gulf. Okay, what was that? 5 years ago now, or longer? I've lost track of time. The last 4 years seems like 2 decades to me. Okay, so the Gulf oil spill was pretty recent in my lifetime, anyway. Okay, you guys remember it too, right? The Gulf oil spill, where that pipeline underwater burst and there was oil gushing out of it for months, okay, destroying everything in the Gulf, okay, killing animals, messing up the water, okay, and there have been others. So that is a big part of the context for this particular argument. All right, let's see. So we talked about context and we identified the purpose, right? Because on the surface, and the purpose of this image is stop the oil industry, right? But what they're really saying to us, to their target audience subtextually, underneath the textual surface, is support us. Support us with your money. That's its primary purpose. Does all of that make sense? Okay. And has that example provided you enough information, to apply to finding your own image, picking one that will work for this assignment, you guys? Do you have any questions about how to pick your image? How to select one? Okay, let me look at how to go about finding an image. Let me close this, or I'll just minimize it. I might need it later. I can't remember. Can't remember what I'm doing. Okay, but I'll minimize that. Okay, here's the assignment to which you will submit your digital image file for approval. Okay, you gotta get a digital file of a picture file, or take a picture of one. Okay, let me open that link and show it to you. And submit it to this assignment. This is all the stuff we were just talking about. Okay, you've got to submit your image here for approval. I've got to say it's okay before you start working with it. Okay, and you can use Google Images, which I'll demonstrate in just a minute, to find a digital image. Or if you see a billboard, it can be any of these kinds of things. If you see a billboard in your travels, you can take a picture of that and submit it. Or a print or online magazine, newspaper, cartoon, a photo of street art, which you can find through Google. All right, so any kind of image that has plenty of visual rhetoric in it for you to analyze and talk about. Then you submit it here. And this demonstrates how to go about using Google and how to use Google to find out what you need to find out about the image. All right, let's do an example. Okay, what are some topics you guys are interested in? Just any topic that interests you. Nobody? An issue or a topic that interests you, that you care about?
Gun control.
Gun control. Okay, let me do gun control. Crap, I'm a terrible typist. For example. Okay. All right, so you guys have done this before. You know how to use Google Images to find images. But right off the top, there's some images that are making an argument about the issue of gun control. And then for more, you go here to images. And then here's a bunch. Let me move my Zoom window over. Here's a bunch of images. A lot of these are pretty simple. Okay, many of these that I'm seeing right off the bat don't have enough visual detail for you to analyze. Okay, this has a lot of textual rhetoric in it. So does this one. So infographics often aren't very good because there's often more textual rhetoric in those, more words and numbers than visual rhetoric. Okay, but political ads are good. Okay, here's a couple. Let's see, let me keep looking here. Some more political ads. Find a good one. Okay, here's something that's interesting because you can tell that the context of this is a protest. All right, so that adds a little bit of information for you to analyze. Let me see if I can find a different one. Here's another one that looks like a state, or that might even be the federal capital. All right, here's one. This one is probably making an argument about women and guns. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, just as an example. It is possible with a little bit more time than I just spent here to find a really good image about this topic. But let me speed this up a bit and just use this one as an example. Oops. Okay, I went to the article, right? And this tells me when it was published. There's an article about it, which gives me information about the context, right? It's a protest at the state capitol in Richmond, Virginia, recently. So I could do a little bit more research about this date and this particular protest to see more of what it was about, to determine more of the context. Let me go back. I got to move my chat window over. God damn it. Now I got to move this thing again. Oops, I custom zoom. Move that down. Okay, let me go back to my examples. So this is what I wanted to show you. Instead of clicking on the link to the image as I did, click on the image, right? And then you can click on the link from there, and that will take you to the article we were just looking at, where you can find out more about the image. And when you do this, you can also see related images, okay? Some of which might have more interest for you, might have more in them for you to analyze. Okay, let me try a different one. Let me try one that's less obvious. Once again, I have to move my chat window and my Zoom window. Okay, so this is Forbes. All right, I don't really know what this argument's going to be about. Okay, let me look at this one. That one looks interesting. It's probably not detailed enough for you guys. All right, but this is also from an article in U.S. News and World Report. Okay, and it's an article in the Washington Post. All right, so you can start to infer who the target audience is, readers of the Washington Post, right? And there's probably an article that goes with this image too. Let me look at a political ad one. Close that. Excuse me, a political cartoon one. All right, now this one is a political ad. And we can see that it was originally published in the Northern Iowan. Okay, so we can go there, we can Google Northern Iowan and find out some more about its readership. Okay, maybe we can check up on the editorial board to see what kind of point of view an editorial cartoon is going to have on this issue of gun violence and gun control. Okay, and that's how you go about finding the stuff you need to find out about your image, so that you can make all of these determinations. You can find out how old it is, who created it, where it was published. From there, you can infer who the audience is. You can identify the context and then interpret the purpose. Okay, is that clear, you guys? Any questions about that? How to find and select an image? All good? All right, give me a thumbs up if that all makes sense to you. Thank you. And thanks for showing me your faces today. I appreciate that for those of you who have. Thank you, you guys. Okay. If you run into any trouble while you're doing this, just contact me right away, okay? This is due fairly soon. All right, this is due on the 4th because I need time to approve your image so that you can start working with it. All right, and I might have some questions for you about it. Hopefully not. If you've done all of this stuff, it should be good to go. If not, I'll ask you some questions, which then you need to answer before I approve the image. So watch out for comments on this assignment. Alrighty, moving on. How am I doing on time, you guys? When is this class over? Soon?
12:30, right?
Thank you. Okay, I gotta hustle. I spent too much time on concepts and stuff. All right, so what I want to do with the time we have left is look at this PowerPoint with you and start to practice this. That's what this is for. Not that, this. Not that. Huh. Maybe I didn't download it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. So here's the PowerPoint. And it's also posted in Canvas if you guys want to look at this on your own and, or review it. You can. It's right there in Canvas in 5.1. Okay, but let me make this bigger and do slideshow. Okay. All right. So I said this already. Basically, everything's a text, right? At least for our purposes, everything is a text. Anything that can be interpreted, okay, evaluated, which is what you're going to do. You're going to interpret, analyze, and evaluate your image. Okay. Why can't I go down? Oops, I went too far. Okay. So here's an ad. When ads use a lot of logos and text. Would you guys read all of this stuff? We don't do it this way anymore. This is how they did it in 1899, right?
Yeah, I'm already nodding off.
Yeah. Yeah, right? You're a child of the digital age. What's
Yeah.
your preferred social media, you guys? What social media do you guys use?
Twitter's the funniest, but also most depressing.
You guys use Twitter?
That's me. I don't know.
No, Noah's the only one. Twitter has so many words, doesn't it, you guys?
Yeah.
Yes, Nathan. Yes, Ethan, thank you. Yeah. I had a student tell me that he doesn't use Twitter because it's too text intensive. Too many
Yeah,
words.
that's me.
So what do you use?
I use Instagram a lot.
There we go. Instagram. Pictures, right?
Yep.
Pictures. That's what we want. We don't want all this mess. We don't have to read this. And look at this boring picture. Nobody's going to even look at this ad these days, right? I mean, I would, but most people wouldn't. All right. How about this one? Whoops, I went too fast. There it is. Thank you for letting me see my faces so I can see your nearly instant reaction to this appalling argument that this image is making. Right?
I don't like that.
No, thank you, Noah. You're the target audience, right, for this image, not me. Okay. Right? Do we agree? The target audience for this image is not females?
Yeah.
Or female identifying humans?
What is that even an ad for?
What do you got? What's it an ad for, you guys?
Jewelry, I guess.
Here. Baton is a jewelry. So this is the only word in this ad. The rest, it's all visual rhetoric, right? It's a ad for jewelry. They're selling this, right? No, Susie, they're not selling that. What are they selling? What's the subtext? On the surface, this image is selling a ring. The argument is buy this ring. What's the subtext?
The subtext is that apparently you can just buy consent now.
That's right.
Don't like that. Yeah,
You're a good guy, Noah.
thank you.
But you guys laughed, right? We all sort of laughed. Some of us grimaced while laughing at this image, right? And the reason for that, I mean, I don't know that the people who created this ad to sell this ring for this jewelry company who commissioned this advertising company and then bought this ad, said, yeah, let's go, let's do it, right? So they're down, the jewelry company's down, right? I don't know if they're serious, if they expect their target audience to take this seriously, or if they just want them to laugh at it and notice it. It's kind of shitty. Oops, I fucked again.
It's certainly memorable. I mean, it achieves that. It achieves the main goal of advertising, maybe in a very sort of rancid way, but it does do it.
That's right. And that is one of the main goals of advertising, especially these days when we are bombarded by literally thousands of discrete ads every single day. They want to get your attention. Okay? So we can already infer some things about the target audience from this image based on the values, beliefs, concerns, interests that appear to be targeted in this image. What demographic, what target audience shares the interests that appear to be targeted in this image?
Straight couples, that's sort of one insinuation.
Okay, straight men, definitely,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, more the men than the couple itself. Yeah.
Right. Women are, remember, this ad, if this was an ad aimed at women, which they are, they're selling engagement rings to women too, but the ads don't look like this. What do they look like? If you pick up a bridal magazine or go online and look at bridal media, digital media now, since we don't do magazines anymore, what is an ad trying to sell to a ring to a woman going to look like? What kind of stuff is it going to have in it?
A family?
Yeah, maybe a family, right? What else? Because that's what the woman wants from the transaction, right? Generally, right? They're stereotyping us, you guys. What else? What else is an ad aimed at women for an engagement ring going to look like?
It's going to be more romantic and like love based, and you look like a princess, and it's your special day, that kind of business.
That's right. She'll have a pretty dress on. It'll be a romantic situation, like maybe on a beach, right? Or at a table in a fancy restaurant with a tablecloth, right? You'll see the whole person, the whole woman will be in the ad, not just a pair of legs, right? Right? Because they want her to project herself into that situation, right? And no woman can project herself into this situation. It's just a pair of legs, not even a whole person. Okay, but a man can, right? Even if humorously, because humor is one of the things that the target audience values. In this demographic, they like stuff that's funny, okay? And they're willing to overlook the cringe if it's funny enough, right? They might cringe like many of you guys did, but they'll laugh and they still might like look up Natan and see if they can get a ring, right? Another missing piece of information that I'll provide to you about this particular image is that it's a kind of image that's likely to appear in a gentleman's magazine, gentlemen, like GQ or Esquire, right? And then from there you can infer more about the target audience. They have money, right? You can sort of infer that from what we see here in the image, although it's very heavily cropped just to show body parts, because that's all that matters in a transaction, right? Is the body parts. Okay. Look at the way this image is organized. Okay. What we've got here is something called juxtaposition, which is a term that you, if you don't know already, you should remember. We're going to refer to it again and again when we talk about more images. Right? It's setting two things side by side so that you have to compare them. And in our culture, we read left to right. Okay, so our eyes naturally move first to this picture and then to this one. This is the before, this is the after. We're used to that convention, right? In visual rhetoric too, the before and after. Okay. The box here is closed. The legs are closed. The box here is open. The legs are open, right? And what's here, you guys? What's there? That's the gateway, isn't it? Okay, so I'm being crass and I'm being silly, but that's the target audience. That's how they're going to view this visual argument. Okay, and look at the attitude of the hands. Here it's kind of caught, right? And the hands are pointing directly to this spot. Okay, the way the image is framed, the perspective of the viewer is looking down on the image, right? So you can extrapolate from that and infer that this is a traditional engagement. And look at how we're making cultural assumptions in order to do this interpretation, right? We just need to be sure that we're doing it consciously. My intention was never to say you can't make cultural assumptions. You have to. We can't read this image without cultural assumptions, right? We know this is an engagement because this is how we do it in our culture. We all automatically identify this as a box probably containing an engagement ring because of all of the details in this image. We read this as engagement. We read this as proposal, right? Like we read the Johnsons as graduation, right? And we read this as an acceptance of the proposal. Transaction almost complete, right? Okay, nothing but visual rhetoric here. But look how fast you guys read that. You read it really fast, and that's how it's supposed to work. Okay, let me move on to the next.
Out of curiosity, do you know when that ad is from?
It's like within the last 10 years or so.
Okay.
It's fairly recent. Okay. It's pre-Me Too movement.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the Me Too movement has not eradicated this from our culture. Sorry.
No, I'm sure an ad could definitely exist like this still.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to move really quickly through this one because we only have 5 more minutes. All right, but this is a piece of visual rhetoric that also includes textual rhetoric, right? So you can get something from the words of the meaning of this argument, right? But you cannot fully interpret this argument without looking at the visual rhetoric as well. This would not mean the same thing without this visual rhetoric. Does anybody know who RT is?
Russia Today.
That's right, Russia Today. And what kind of organization is Russia Today?
It's the media.
Right. It's what media organization?
I would say it's right wing.
It's Russian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Russians aren't conservative or liberal, right or left the same way Americans are, right? In Russia, there's pretty much one functional political party, and it's Putin's party, right? And unlike here, where we still have a free press, there goes my neck, okay? In Russia, they do not. They do not have a free press in any way near the same way we do in the US. Okay, it's state-run media in Russia. Okay, the government controls the news for the most part. There are independent news organizations in Russia, but their reporters are murdered on a regular basis if they say anything against the state, which they do because what else is there to report on? Okay. So anyway, that's the source. That's the source of this argument. That helps us interpret some things about it, what its main argument is likely to be. One more thing you need to know about this is where it's likely to be seen. This is part of a media campaign by RT Russia Today posters and billboards like this, very similar to this, that appeared in international airports. Okay, so you can get a sense of who the target audience is. You can also infer that from some of the details in the image, who the target audience is. What's the argument this image is making, you guys?
Is it that Americans are terrorists? Is that an American soldier?
Yeah, it's that it depends on your point of view, right? But to assert that, it only need that's an idea, this argument would assume, only needs to be asserted to Americans or Westerners. Okay, how did you get the idea about Americans from this image? Susie or anybody else? What details read American in this image?
The gun.
Okay, the particular weapon. What kind of weapon is that?
I guess it's called the what, M16 or M4. I don't know. They change it.
It's some sort of American-made weapon, an M something or an AR something. I don't know weapons either, right? But it's not a Russian weapon, right? Even if you don't know weapons, okay? Whereas this one is clearly not typical of the weapons that American or Western soldiers use. It's typical of the weapon different kinds of soldiers use. But we don't call them soldiers, do we? What do we call them in the West?
Territory.
We call them terrorists, right? Right? So this is an argument trying to confront and what's the word? Counter. That's the word I'm looking for. Our idea of what a terrorist is. It's in the eye of the beholder, or in the experience of the person who's being terrorized, or persons. Okay, for us, this is the face of the terrorist, right? For other people, this is a face of terrorism. Okay, another important piece of context here, and I'll have to leave you with that because it's time to go, but we'll come back to this. There's a lot more to say about the visual rhetoric here, is that at the time that this image appeared, a U.S. soldier was being convicted for having walked into a nearby village in Afghanistan or Iraq, I can't remember, and slaughtering 16 villagers, women and children. Okay, he lost his mind and he walked into that village and just killed everybody. Okay, those people saw this face as the face of terrorism. Okay, and I'll leave it at that for today, but we'll come back to this image next time we meet. Okay, and we'll go through some more images in this slideshow and talk about them as a way of exemplifying the kind of analysis you need to do for Essay 2. Does that make sense, you guys? Everybody still with me? Okay, 12:31, I gotta let you go. Have a good weekend, all right? And contact me if you have any problems with anything.
Thank you.
All righty, talk to you later, bye.